training today. This is just how you guys are going to make event registrations, forms, membership applications, which I'm going to make with you guys together today. We're also going to be using it to anything miscellaneous, donation forms, sponsorship forms, all that fun stuff. So there's only one place that we can access our forms, and that's going to be our forms and form sub-menu. So once we're in the form list, you'll notice a couple things. So I've already got 2 forms here that I need to create. This agreement of affiliate, maybe? Does that sound right?
I'm sorry. I had myself on mute. I apologize.
You're fine.
Okay, so yeah, so there's an application, and then with that, when you turn that in, you have to fill out those other, there's like an agreement and of the affiliation, like the guidelines. So it's kind of like a 2-part thing.
So I'll have to get back in there. Sorry for the fun. Okay, that makes perfect sense. So, but I do only have 3 forms for you guys: the exam registration, membership application, and then that affiliate.
Oh yeah, is that, do we call that, or the sustaining members application? And you probably should open it on my end so I can see, because sorry, it's been a while and this week is nutty.
Well, and I'm going to have that too. So, but we can both have it up at the same time, and we're going to look back and forth between the membership application and creating the form on the back end. So that's fine. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I had all 3 forms that I knew I needed to create.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome. Okay. 3. Awesome. So I'm in the form list. When we get ready, is how we've got, you'll notice the 2 forms I've started for you guys are already in here. And as you create more forms, they're always going to be listed in this area. This will always list your forms alphabetically. So if you have a ton of forms, just keep in mind they're always going to be alphabetical. Some of my associations will put in order to find the ones that they need most commonly. You'll notice when I hover over one of these forms, we've got a couple of different selections of different items, like action items we can do. If I select these 3 horizontal dots next to each other, it's got an option to delete or copy. One thing I want to mention about this is the second that a form submission has been completed on one of your forms, it will not be able to be deleted. And the reason why is because we can use forms to collect information on your members and store it in their profile. So if we deleted the form submission or the form that collected that information, it would in turn delete all of that information.
Okay.
So that's why we can't delete them. So over time, you're going to have a ton of forms in here since you can't delete any. We do have this ability to change the status to archive. So they can be published, unpublished, or archived. When you archive a form, then it won't show up in this area unless you check the Show Archive Forms box. And then in that case, obviously, you'd be able to see any archive forms. You can also copy forms. That's going to be extremely helpful to you. For you all, or you can have a main template that you just kind of use each time. And each time that you do that, you'll be able to just copy it, make a couple tweaks, and now you've got your new form. You're going to want to have a different form for every event that you host. So like if you guys did monthly luncheons, you wouldn't want to use the same form for every luncheon. You'd want to have a new form each time because you're keeping track of how many people are registering through each form. You can search on that information. You can export that information. So if you use the same form, you really don't know who's registered for which luncheon, right? Kind of like just using that as an event. You want to make sure you know exactly who registered for the 2017 conference and then know exactly who registered for the 2018 conference, not have them jumbled. Awesome. You can also take this form and then edit. Taking this form will will actually allow you to assume somebody's profile and take the form on behalf of them. Somebody may give you guys a paper membership application. Somebody may call you and say, hey, I'm driving down the road and I want to come to your event. I totally forgot to register and I know today's the last day. Can you just register for me? You'll always take this form. You can choose their name from the pop-up of your database, or you can always search for their name, or you can always proceed as a new profile. That will simultaneously allow you to take the form for them and create a prospect profile for them if they are not already in your database, or a membership profile if it's the membership application. And then you'll just be able to proceed. You'll go into the form and you'll be able to fill out the questions just as if it was them taking the form themselves. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Lastly, we can edit. That's just going to bring you back into the form builder, which we're going to go in there in just a second. But before we do that, I want to go ahead and go through the process of creating a new form together. So when you jump in here and you're ready to create a new form, you're going to select Create a Form. And then that little thing that we were just talking about a second ago, it was well, where'd you go? Oh, there you are. That was called the agreement of, is that agreement of affiliate? Is that what that is called? Affiliation.
That, yeah, but that's not, well, that's not, yeah, it's so weird. I know. You're the weirdest. It's kind of a form, yeah. But this is something them to print and provide a hard copy as well.
No, we don't.
Go to the other one. Let's not do this one yet. Go back in and do this on my own.
Okay.
Let's do the sustaining membership. Oh, I sent you, I sent you a Word form and a PDF form. I see.
Oh,
it should be right there. That one, yes. That's the one.
Now, these membership applications can be 2 in 1. So they can all be the same one. We don't have to have separate applications for separate nights.
Oh, okay. Well, then
I'll show
we
you
can
what
combine them.
Do what?
I said, yeah, then we can combine them.
One together right now. So I'm just going to call this test. So we're creating a new form. We call it whatever we want to name it. That's internal.
Just say test membership. Yeah, or test membership.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to actually create this. I'm just showing you what the steps are. So I'm going to end up.
I see. Okay.
But basically, I just wanted to point out whatever name you put here is totally internal. Your members will not see this name. So you can put whatever you want in here that will help you understand what this form is being used for. And then you would need to select what type of form this is going to be. Our forms by default have some specific sections that are auto built into the form. By that is every form you create in our system is going to have a login section. Every form will have a summary section. Every form will have a payment section. Every form will have a section. The actual body of the form itself, that is what is going to determine what type of form we're creating. And we have 3 different bodies of our form to choose from, either a membership application, an event registration, or a general section. We're making a membership application. We're going to check that box. This form will be used for membership. That's going to tell the system to automatically bring in the membership section into the form. This could be used for an event registration. And in that case, if we check that box, the form is going to automatically bring in the event registration section to the form. This form can be used for both, or it could be used for neither. So it could also be used for both of these things simultaneously, membership and event registration. It can also be used for neither, which would just be a general section. So if you get in here and you get affiliate, that thing that we were just looking at, this is the agreement of affiliation. You could create that here and have a space for them to e-sign, but it's not membership, it's not event registration, it's just a general form. So we would check either of these boxes and we would select save, done. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah. Awesome.
So I'm not actually going to create a new form right now, but save is going to take it into the form builder, which looks like this. Now, before I keep list, how to create a new form, any of that good stuff.
Nope.
Okay, great. So now that we're in our form builder, the form builder is comprised of two different columns. We have our right-hand column. I like to refer to the right-hand column. We're going to start by looking at this right-hand side. I refer to this as our rough draft. So this is kind of like what the form would look like. It's just not pretty yet. It's not in our website template. And so I mentioned in the beginning that our form is automatically consistent or automatically. Here's the login section. This is the first kind of built-in section into our form. Now, as we go from section to section, we can look at the properties. So if I select this properties button, it's going to show me exactly what we can do to this login section. What can we change? The first item is the name of the login section. I mentioned in the beginning of this training that name that you put in when you did the form, that's not what your members will see. The name that your members will see as they navigate through the form is whatever name is on it. It doesn't make sense for them to take the form and just say login. Maybe it needs to say login for membership application. You're going to notice in a second this is going to update on our tab, and this is what your member would see when they first see this title. They're only going to see whatever is on each tab as we navigate from section to section. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, cool. The next thing that we can look at is we do have the thing about turning off the login section. Is that is going to mean that it's going to be submitted anonymously. So you won't know who submitted the form. Another thing I want to mention is if you don't have the login section on, the form doesn't recognize who's taking the form, that if you are using any of the fields that can collect information to store in a member's profile, it's not going to know where to store it. So it's kind of just like with information going where. Vice versa, the alternate of that is if somebody has been a member for a long time with you and they're taking an event registration form, those fields will also auto-populate with info from their profile, so they don't have to fill out the same information that you've already collected. But once again, if they haven't logged in, it's not going to know who's taking the form, so it's not going to be able to auto-populate any of the info login section on. The only reason you might want to turn it off is if you were doing anonymous voting or anonymous surveys or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. You also can determine who, like if you only want existing users to be able to log in. So let's say you're having an event and only existing users can come to the event, then you would be allowing existing users to log in. Or maybe only new users are allowed to take this form. It's only giving them the new user section. Usually it's giving both sections. Usually all users can log in. So whether they're an existing user or a new user. Do you see how that affected the login section, what I just changed?
Yeah.
Okay. Then we've got this last little item down here, multiple submissions. So if we toggle this on, it's going to allow multiple submissions, meaning I can take this form today and then tomorrow I can come back and take it again. Once again, 10 times out of 10, you really don't want me to do that submitted, so I just do it again just to make sure. Or I can't remember if I submitted my form, so I just come in here and do it again to make sure. And then you start getting a lot of form submissions, and that becomes a pain for you guys. So I would traditionally just leave this off unless you have a donation. They can come in here and donate every single day, and that would be totally fine, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, so that is everything about the login section. Any questions on the login section, how that functions or anything?
Nope.
Awesome. So now we're going to go ahead and jump into the application. The next section is the membership application portion. Now, I've already brought fields into the section. I don't want to go over any of the items that are inside the section yet. Once again, I just want to look at the properties for the section. Same thing, if this membership, this is the name on this tab is going to be what they see as they navigate into this membership section. That may not make a lot of sense to them, so you may want to actually spell this out and say membership application. You can enable the membership application. That's what we're using this for, so of course we want this turned on. You can require the membership section when available to the user. I would always turn that on because otherwise they can bypass the entire membership section, which allows them to submit a membership application with no information attached to it, which is never what you want, right? So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. Now we can display this membership application. We can display an area for new users or an area for renewals. So your members will have the ability to come in here and take this as a new, as a new member. But technically, this can also be used as a renewal application. Now, most of the time, you're talking about something that doesn't matter.
No, you are, because this would be our association members, so they renew every year.
But they are not receiving renewal notifications, correct?
No, they will.
They will. Okay.
We're waiting because we are required to pay until February. Yeah, so we're still deciding that. Yeah.
Got it. So traditionally, the way this works is this could be used for both a renewal application and a new member application. But most of the time, the way it works is your members receive that renewal notification offline payment. That's the easiest way to renew dues in the MemberClicks product. But if somebody ends up being a lapsed member for any reason, and I know we've talked about some of the differences that you guys have, and so sorry if I'm talking about anything that doesn't matter, but just trying to go through some of the general info. If there's anything that, I've lost my mind. Oh, basically what I'm trying to say, if she's a lapsed member, at that time it's easier for them to come in here and take the membership application to renew. If you have a lot of people renewing through the renewal form, it would be smart to have two separate forms, one for new members, one for renewal members. Some of my associations do that who have a lot of members that renew through forms. Most of my associations, their members just renew through the notifications they receive, through the email that they get. And so most of the time, it really doesn't matter. They may have one or two people a year that renews through this actual membership application. So it really doesn't make a big difference if it's the same form or not. Biggest thing that I want to drive home in this is that either way, even if your members wanted to take the renewal application, they would not be able to do so until they're in their renewal period. Now, the renewal period is signified by that first notification going, which simultaneously creates an invoice on the back end. That invoice lets the system know, okay, this person owes us money. And if the system owes money, if the system recognizes that, it recognizes that they're in their renewal period, and that's when they could potentially take the renewal form. Did that make sense?
Kind of.
I know, it's kind of like a weird. We're going to talk about it again, so if you don't get it this first go around, we're definitely going to talk about it many more times. Do you have any questions on that I can answer for you right now?
No, let's just keep moving forward for now.
Okay. All right. Basically, it kind of explains that down here. We'll talk about it again on the application yet. I'm going to keep moving, and I'm going to go ahead and jump into the summary section. Same thing, we can select the properties. We would want to turn the summary section on. This is just going to show them the questions that you've asked of them and also give them a summary of the info that they provided. So we can add or edit the summary fields, and we can include as many summary fields as we want. The more fields we add to the form, the more summary fields we can allow them to summarize, right? So if we added a new field to the form, we would need to come back in here and check it to say, yep, they can summarize that as well. But that's just to see in an application process. Payment section is always going to be crucial. So we're going to select the properties for the payment section. Same thing. We always want to make sure we have selected our payment processor, selected our invoice template, and then also decided if they can pay later with an invoice. So what that means is that if this is turned off, that means that they have 5 payment at time of form submission. If they're allowed to submit the application or submit the registration, pay that invoice later, then you can turn this on. That's going to create an open invoice for them that they can then come back and pay later. Does that make sense?
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Lastly, we have our confirmation section. This is my favorite part of the form. Now I can select the field here, and I just click on that thank you field. What's going to happen is the second your members submit a form, a page is going to come up on their computer, and it's going to say whatever you've written in here. So we can edit the confirmation page. Thank you, your form has been submitted successfully. You can add as much info as you'd like in here. This is also a great area to create like a receipt. So what you can also do is use merge data. We can merge any form data. For example, we could merge in their submission balance, submission date, and that's going to kind of reach for them. Now, the cooler part of this is we can also select the properties for the confirmation section, and we can create a confirmation email. So they'll get this page that they'll see, and they'll hit finish, and then the system's going to send out a confirmation email. Not only is this going to go to the member, so you can include all fields to create that receipt, but you can also BCC yourself on this. The reason this is important is because if I was you, I wouldn't want to be coming into MemberClick every single day to see, do we have any new members? Do we have any new registrants? Instead, it's an email. So that's letting you know if any kind of activity has been going on in MemberClick. Does that make sense?
Yes. That's a nice feature.
I love this. I think this is really cool. All right, that has kind of covered all the sections. Any questions on any of the sections that we've reviewed so far?
Nope.
Awesome. So now let's start talking about the left-hand side. Now, anytime I've clicked on a property section or field that's a part of the form, it brings me to this element properties tab. So anytime I click on any of these items, it's showing me what can I customize about that specific thing. What can I change or customize about that specific section or that specific field on the form? There's also a settings tab. That's this far left tab over here. This tab, whatever I do under here, is going to affect the form as a whole. Anything I do in the form settings tab is going to change the entire form. So the big difference, element properties, that's the specific form settings has to do with the form as a whole. Now our form name, that's just what we called the form when we created it. In this case, it was membership application. And then you can also add a form description. Once again, both of these areas are purely internal. Nobody else is going to see this info.
Okay.
Then you have your form alias. The form alias is going to come after the form in the URL to create a direct link to this specific form. So if we went to caapa.memberclick.net/membership-application, that would take us to this form. We can change our status of a form, whether it's unpublished, archives are published just like we could in the form list portion. We can turn on a form expiration date. The form expiration date, you really probably wouldn't want to use this for a membership application. So we would want to leave this off, but for like an event registration, you would definitely want to have an expiration date. Then we have group permission. This is who can see the form, period. Who's allowed to see the form. If for some reason specific individual, specific of your member types can't see it, then in that case, you would just uncheck that individual member type. And they wouldn't even be able to access the form. Does that make sense? Going too fast, this is like going over your head because forms is a lot.
No, that's okay, because I'll probably have to watch this back several times anyways, and then, you know, send
Okay.
follow-up questions.
I gotcha. Neither of these items are going to work on a membership application. Neither of them are eligible to work on a membership application, but these are very useful for event registration forms or general forms. So what that means is, like, if you have an event and if they, if you have an event and if somebody registers, you know, the first 2 months that the event is available, then you offer like an early bird discount. Or maybe if you can set it up so if they register the month before the event, then there could be, so it could be like a little bit more. So that's how we would set up the date-based pricing. Then we also have discount codes. Discount codes are most oftentimes used for maybe like sponsors. So if you have an event and you have sponsors that are coming to it, they can register for the event just as if they were one of your members, but you can give them a discount code to enter in at the end of the form. Usually they'll type it in, and that will either zero out their balance or provide that discount to their total. So these are both really cool things. We can't really set them up unless we have a live example, which I know we've got a registration form that we. But really what I want to point out is that we can do it. So at some point you may get ready to set these up, but you're going to be like, I don't remember how to do it, and Adrian will walk you through how to do that.
Okay. Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Because I know some of the stuff is like, oh, I didn't get the last thing I want to point out is the forward URL. So at the end of the form, when your members have submitted it and they're gone away from it, by default, they're going back to the home page of your website. If you want them redirected somewhere else, maybe to another page of information, maybe to an external link, you would just put that link right in here. So instead of them going back to the home page, they're just going to end up going to whatever link.
Okay, that's cool.
Now that is everything. That is everything for form settings. So we've gone through element properties, that's changing specific fields or sections of the form. We've been through form settings. Whatever you do under this tab applies to the form as a whole. There's only one more tab to look at, and that's add form elements. So at one point, well, let me stop for a second. Before I keep going, any questions?
No, I think, oh, Christine?
No, I don't have any, but later. I mean, I think that, you know, watching it will be immensely helpful, but I'm sure questions are going to arise as other people will watch this training.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys end up with a list of questions, because I totally agree with you, right? In this training, you don't even know the questions to ask yet until you're getting in here and playing around. So after this training, you guys will have the opportunity to go back and watch it a couple times. I'm going to provide some additional resources on forms, and if you end up with a list of questions, we can just schedule some time together and we can just work through those questions.
Okay, great. Because so far it seems pretty user-friendly. However, I know once we get, you know, started on it, we'll have questions.
Exactly. And it is very user-friendly. But same thing, right? It's like it's almost like since I'm the driver, when you actually get in the seat, you're like, it looks so easy to choose. How did you even get there?
So true.
Yeah, you make it look so easy.
I'm like, just go here, press 2,500 other buttons, and you're done. Yeah, no, we'll definitely have some more time just to go through questions on this. Playing around with our forms as well is super helpful. This next part actually is pretty easy. So I've talked about form settings. We've got this middle button element. So basically, when you're like, I'm ready to add fields to my form, you're going to select Add Form Elements. Now, this Add Form Elements is broken up into 4 different sections, kind of like sub menus we have here. Built-in and custom attributes.
Real quick,
Okay, I can do that.
Okay.
So we have our built-in and custom attributes. We've talked a lot about these different types of attributes in the system and how the built-in attributes are things like physical address, phone number, email address, organism, first name, last. Custom attributes would have been any of those items from your database that we wouldn't have known you collected on your members. So that would be the difference between built-in and custom attributes. The cool thing about using either of these types of attributes on our form when we're building our fields that we're asking from your members is that these 2 different types of attributes will be collecting information from the form and storing in your member's profile. And then, like I mentioned earlier, vice versa, it's going to auto-populate the fields that you coded on your members. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll into the body of our form. That's where we're actually going to apply these different types of fields. So that wouldn't be the login section, it would be the membership application section. Now, before I actually add these fields to the form, I want to start at the top and go through some of these default fields with you guys. We already talked about how this form could be used for a renewal application or for a new member application. So we've got different verbiage here for either of those items. If we select any of these fields, you'll notice we can edit this text. So if you wanted to put in definitions of your member types or just give additional information, then you can do that in this area. Same thing for that renewal text. Same thing also to update and renew your organization's membership, choose from the membership options below. One would be renewing individuals, renewing companies. The next item is this member type. So basically when your members are in the form, they're going to have a drop down of which member type they can select. This area is where you would choose what member types they can choose from, or they could add themselves as. So we can edit these member types. If they can select association, CCP, individual, or sustaining, then we're going to go ahead and check all 3 of these. Obviously, I unchecked admin because nobody could apply as an admin. Kind of silly. So they'll be able to choose from one of these 3 options. You can save. The membership options, these would be for renewals. Your membership renewal members will always be able to choose the same member type they were in previously. So if I was an associate member, the only option going into renewing membership is choosing associate. Unless you open up my membership options and my member type settings, at a later time if that's necessary. But basically, we have to kind of create those pathways if they can select other types of member types, other options of member types. Now we have.
I'm back.
Good, you're back.
I'm back. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. I'm really just at this point jumping into this membership application section. What I was just about to talk about was how we have 2 different pieces that make up the membership application section. Because you guys have a member type that holds the organizational structure. We have an organizational section. So if I am an organizational member type, this first part I'm going to fill out is all about my organization. So I'm going to put in the name, the organization's email address, phone number, physical address, and website. Visual member, I'm going to come down here, and there's a different section all about the individual link profile. They can even create additional link profile accounts. So if there are multiple link profiles that they're trying to register at one time, they can do that all at one time and just fill out basically different sections for different linked individuals. If I am an associate, or I forget which one had that organizational structure, but basically if I'm an individual member type, don't have that, hold that organizational member type structure, I'm only going to see the individual section.
Okay.
So I've added these fields in. This part's actually really easy. We're going to go to add form elements. So just like how I added the email address in, you would just grab whatever attribute you want to pull in, whatever field you want to pull in, drag and drop it onto the field or onto the form. And you'll notice it gave us a green area as to where we wanted to drop that, or where we could drop it. If we couldn't drop it somewhere, it wouldn't be green, or it would be red. Now, you'll notice when I've dropped an item onto the form, it automatically brings me back to those element properties. Does this item need to be required? Item, do we need to change the label name? Should we change the permissions? So kind of like for the sustaining form, if you're asking different questions of your members that are sustaining members than you were for associate or that CCP level, then you could just permission the different fields for different member types to see them. The form can kind of be dynamic in that way. I can also delete this section because I already have on the form, so we don't need it twice. So we're going to be able to do that with any of our built-in attributes. I went ahead and added the built-in attributes into the organization section, and then if I scroll down, also in the links section. So these are all on your form that I noticed. The name, address, telephone number, website, contact person. We don't really need to have that separate because it's going to be whoever is a linked individual. I added their title, the address, telephone number, and email address. So all of the items are added. Now, if we wanted to add custom attributes, we would do the same thing. Designations is an example of that. I just grabbed and dragged onto the form. How long have you been in this profession? You guys might end up wanting to ask that. Just to show you, that's probably not a question you would want the company to answer, because the company's not a person. The company haven't really been in the profession. It's more of the individual linked profiles that have been in the profession. So we would only want to ask that individual section, not in the organizational section. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's and then we can always go in and add more of those attributes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can go in custom attributes, and those are going to reflect in this area.
Okay.
All right, awesome. So that's how we add built-in and custom attributes. Now there are still two more subfields over here, form fields and presentation items. Let's look at those form fields for just a second. I mentioned that built-ins and custom attributes are things that are going to be collected in the form and stored in the individual's profile. There will be some questions you need to ask on your form, probably more like your event registration forms, where you don't need that information and stored in the individual's profile forever. You really just need it for the form submission. So that an example of that would be like if you guys have an upcoming luncheon and you need to ask what type of sandwich do you want for the luncheon, church veggie. To know 10 years from now that in 2017, the October luncheon, Bob had a ham sandwich, right? That doesn't work. You really just need it in submission itself or to create an invoice. So that's where these form fields come into play. So you would do things like grab the field and drag onto the form. Now, these same fields should look familiar because we use these to create new custom views. Does this look familiar at all?
Sorry, I just had to step away again. But yeah, I think you were showing that last time on the the last thing when I stepped back in. I'm sorry.
You're totally fine. So basically, we're going to just same kind of concept. We're just going to grab and drag in. Country is kind of a silly example. Drop down of all the country options. So you could say something like, "What country would you like to have the 2018 conference?" I mean, that's kind of a silly example, but basically that would be the drop down of all the countries. One thing I want to point out is that this label name, we're also putting it in the export name. The reason why is because you'll have the ability to export all of these form submissions, and the export name is whatever the column header is going to be called in the Excel document. So if you don't fill this out, all it would have said is country, and you wouldn't have had a clue as to what all this information was. So make sure whenever you change the label, you're also updating the export name. Going back to the add form elements.
Makes sense.
Okay, perfect. Going back to the add form elements, we've got the date. That's going to allow us to update the, it's going to allow you to collect a date from your members. So same thing, you could, what date would you like to have the 2008? So once again, that's just going to allow them to give you a date field. File will allow them to upload a file, like maybe their resume. Image will allow them to upload an image, like maybe a headshot. We're going to skip number and selection set. I'm going to come back to these in just a moment. State is going to give them a drop down of all the states. A text box is just a blank text box that will allow them to fill in the information. So the only time we're going to use these on our forms is if we don't need this information saved in a member's profile, if we just need it for the form submission or to help create an invoice. Text, for example, would you like on your, they may change that each event. So you wouldn't want to necessarily save that in their profile because they might change it next time. They might put Charlie on their name tag, and then next time they may go, well, this one's a promotional event. I really want Charles, something like that. Now I skipped number and selection, but the reason why is because these are special. If I grab this number field, this will either allow them to put in purely a number, but it'll also allow you to collect money. So notice there's a price field toggle. If I toggle this on, it's going to reflect on the form as like a times something. This could be useful for how many conference tickets do you need? And then you can change the price of how much each ticket is. Maybe each ticket's $75. So this will reflect on the show, you know, if they need 5 tickets, 5 times 75, and that'll reflect the total on an invoice. This is telling this form you need to create an invoice for this amount. You could also just use this as a currency input. So instead of a number input, you have a currency input. This is really useful for donation. How much would you like to donate? And then that will allow them to how much they want to collect money. There's an extra step that you'll always need to make sure you complete, and that's this edit payment processor and revenue account. If I select FS and revenue account, this is going to be how the invoice line item reads on the invoice. Clearly, we don't want it to say number. We would want it to maybe say donation total. And then you'll always want to select a revenue account. Now, the second item that we skipped over, selection set. Similar concept. You can use a selection set to collect money. So once again, going back to my original, we could say what type of sandwich would you like for the upcoming luncheon? Always wanting to make sure we've copied and pasted that into our export name. And there's that price field option. Again, we can toggle this on, add our selections. So we could say ham, turkey, veggie. Now we can put in how much each of these cost. Maybe ham is $10, maybe turkey is $10, and maybe veggie is only $8. We can also put in limits. So let's say the caterer said, well, I only have enough ham to make 50 ham sandwiches, but I can make unlimited turkey and veggie sandwiches. Then you could put in a limit. Once ham is selected 50 times, they will not be able to select ham again. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm going to keep moving. Oops. The only other tab that I wanted to talk about is the presentation items. These really just have to do with how the form presents itself. So in the beginning, when we check those boxes to create this form, we got to choose whether this was for an event or a general, just a general form. You ever mess up those checkboxes, you can always pull them in manually. There's our event section, here's the general section. Add them in. So if I select the properties, I can always select delete. And this presentation tab, the only other things that we have in here are really just about how this form is going to look. And so that would be items like a horizontal line. It could be used as a separator. So notice it's separating the sections of our form. A label, this is really just going to be like a text box needed to give directions or instructions. You can add a label in, edit that label text. Edit that label text, and that's going to allow you to put in however much or whatever directions or instructions you want to add in. Page breaks, those are usually automatically included. This is an example. But if you've created your own survey, you may want to add manual page breaks to help break it up a little bit for your members. And then lastly, white space is literally just some white. Another great item to use to section or segment your form off. And that is every I'll be able to go back and listen to come up with some questions. I think Sarah might have walked away. Anybody that might be hanging out on the phone, do you guys have any questions, anything I can answer on this?
Hi, I'm sorry, I did have to walk away again. I apologize, but I am back. So I don't have any questions, but I'm sure, like Christine said, we will just back and we'll probably have some more questions and we can go into further detail or compile all of our questions and things like that.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. I'll go ahead and get y'all's follow-up email to you. I'm going to go ahead and